Ta-da!
Finally.
Yeah.
All right, it is 6:30. Tom, do you have to do anything else before we get started?
I will begin recording just right now.
Yes, I do.
Oh, there's the docket.
Madam Clerk, when you're ready, can you please call the roll?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Jamie Bova,
Here.
Lynn Underwood Segley,
Here.
Catherine E. Leonard, Angela McCalla.
Here.
Justin S. Mclaughlin,
Here.
Jean Marie Napolitano, Susan D. Taylor.
Here.
Jean Marie Napolitano.
Councillor Leonard is present and Councillor Napolitano is also present.
Susan
We just
D.
cannot
Taylor.
hear them.
Here.
There's a
Jean
quorum
Marie.
present, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To
of
the flag of the
the
United
United
States,
States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay.
Before we get started, I actually want to make a motion to move item number 8, which is the resolution on the school bond, to after the public hearing, because I know that there are quite a large number of folks who decided to dial into this meeting for that item. So I move that we move item number 8 ahead of item number 2.
Second.
There is a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councillor Segley?
Aye.
Councillor Leonard?
Aye.
Councillor McCalla?
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano?
Aye.
Councillor Taylor?
Aye.
Mayor Bova? Aye. The ayes have it. And so now we have the public hearing on the proposed FY21 budget. And that includes the first reading of the ordinance appropriating revenues and the ordinance amending Title III personnel. And before we get started on the actual public hearing, I wanted to give the city manager an opportunity to speak to the budget and some of the action that you did over the past 2 weeks since we last had this in front of us.
Sure. Jamie, this is Mclaughlin, the city manager. You know, not much has changed over the last 2 weeks when we initially provided this budget to you. A couple of things. We have some clarity with regard to the school budget, albeit it has not been officially tendered to us just yet. My understanding is that the school committee will be voting on their budget tomorrow evening, and then it will be officially tendered to us sometime tomorrow. I did provide a lot of discussion has ensued. This is one of the topics that's first and foremost at the top of our list, and in particular, I'm in contact with the finance director every year. And as I've indicated before, this was a very difficult budget to craft. It'll be a difficult budget to monitor, and we may be having this discussion about budgets a month from now or 2 months from now or every week for a while. There's so much uncertainty with regard to municipal government that we're probably going to have this discussion going forward. There was an article in the Providence Journal today that described the interaction that the governor has had with the leaders of the General Assembly. And at least the article, as what I've gleaned from the article, is they're not certain as to, or even close to being certain as to what things are going to look like next fiscal year. I did provide the council a memorandum on or about May 22nd that generally talked about the budget that's been presented to you. I made a suggestion that perhaps the council could consider or may want to consider, it's of course entirely up to the council, a slight tax rate increase. I provided a table that reflected what the levy would look like and what the rate would look like based upon a percentage of rate increase. And my thinking, one of the assumptions that we made when we crafted this budget, the budget that we presented to you last time, was that the difficulty that many individuals are encountering, many homeowners are encountering, property owners are encountering, and businesses are encountering with regard to this pandemic and economic losses that are ensuing. So the budget that we presented to you last time did not have a tax increase. And of course, we cut our own budget drastically and did some things that we generally were not completely happy with, like eliminating the transfer to the OPEB trust of $820,000, eliminating transfers to the equipment replacement account of, of $1,261,000 approximately, drastically reducing capital funding, and some other miscellaneous reductions. I thought perhaps, Laura and I thought perhaps that a slight tax increase may be in order, because we do recommend in going forward that we try to recapture these funds, and that the only way you recapture these funds are through a tax rate and some other miscellaneous of some proportion over some number of years. That's entirely a policy decision that the council has to make, either a tax rate increase or indeed even recapturing these funds, albeit we recommend that would occur. And we also recommended, if you do that, which at 2% would raise, I think, approximately $1,500,000 in change, we would then recommend how those funds would bleed back into the reductions that we made, because we, the finance department and city administration generally believes that we need to recapture those funds, and we just end up further in a hole through those drastic reductions in keeping the tax rate level. Again, there's a lot of uncertainty. There is no, in past years, I think we were close to having a good science on this and a robust discussion about where we were going with the city, but it's been difficult, and it's a difficult discussion that I'm sure we'll have this evening, and going forward, a difficult discussion in the coming months. That's what I think I've said what I need to say on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone from the council, would anyone from the council like to be heard before we open it up to the public?
Yes.
Councillor Leonard.
Okay. 2 weeks ago, city manager's right. We were told that no tax increase was suggested. Today we're hearing 2%. And once I looked, and I've been doing it all along, looking at the budget, the cuts that were made in the budget to, quote, keep it at the level we were at, were basically just items that we're postponing paying for, like OPED and so forth. So for me, I can't vote for a 2% increase during these times, because I also think that by doing so, we send a message that we have more money to spend, and then therefore there's little incentive to get any concessions in the contracts we have. So I personally feel that 2% should not have come up in the last few days as it has. So I'm just saying out loud, I can't support that. I think in these times, people are really hurting, and that we've got to really get a hold of our budgets and stick to them and do what we have to do.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Thank you. This is Councillor Justin Mclaughlin. Joe and I had a conversation earlier today, and so this would be old to him. In general, we don't have the school budget yet. We can guess what it is. We've already been given 2 copies of it by them. But I have no interest in voting on a budget where a large item, $25+ million, we don't have a budget for it, and it's just bad practice. But more specifically to a tax increase, one of the reasons for doing the tax increase might be to give the schools the 1.8 or 1.9% increase that we think they want. Yet their budget that we've seen thus far, which we don't really know what it's going to be until they vote on it, doesn't take credit for all the money that the state said they were going to give them. And if they actually got all that money from the state, which all things being unequal today, there's no reason to think that they will, but then they wouldn't need any more money from us. So in some ways, it's hard to know how the pieces on the chessboard align tonight without knowing exactly what's going on in that budget. But in a broader way, as was pointed out in a discussion this morning that Bryant University put on to talk about the economy in the state of Rhode Island, somebody asked about what about furloughs in state government? And thus far, the governor has not furloughed anybody. But the reality is, at some point in time, state employees are not going to be sacrosanct, and there may be a need to cut employees. And looking at the city of Newport budget, you'll find that we see revenue losses in various places because of reduced activity, but we haven't done anything with respect to the manpower in those cost centers. And I think we need to look at that more carefully so that we know what we're doing. But the bottom line is, if there isn't work to be done because we don't expect activity in certain cost centers, then maybe we should be looking to reduce the personnel costs in those cost centers. So at a macro level, I hope that other people will discuss this, but at some point in time, I don't think we should vote on this tonight. And Joe and I talked about the possibility of having a special meeting next week, at which point in time we would have the school budget and we could take this budget up more formally. I'm done.
Okay, we can open it up to the public. Can the clerk begin calling on individuals?
Looks like we have.
Can you speak up, Madam Clerk?
Yes, can you hear me? Is that
Yes.
better?
Mhm.
I'm just going to turn my audio up. Daniel Paquette.
Daniel, can you please identify yourself with your name and address for the record? I don't know if we need to unmute him or if he needs to unmute himself, but Daniel, we cannot hear you.
Okay, maybe we'll move on.
Okay, go ahead.
to-
He's unmuted now.
Okay.
So Daniel, can you please introduce yourself with your name and address for the record?
Name's Daniel Paquette, 10 Faxon Green. I had actually raised my hand quite by accident, so I do not have a specific question at this point.
Okay. And if you, for everyone, if you do raise it by accident, you can always click raise hand again and it will lower it for you.
Okay, so next we have Kate Gardulo.
Kate, can you unmute yourself and then please identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Looks like maybe we lost her.
Okay. Is there, we don't have anyone with their hand up now. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to be heard?
Okay, we have Nat.
Can you please unmute yourself and then identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Hi, my name is Natalie Harris. I live at 85 Hillside Avenue, Newport. I also represent the HES, and I am definitely for the schools. And
Natalie, this is a public hearing on the budget specifically. There will be time when we consider the schools for the public to speak on the schools.
oh, okay, I'm sorry about that.
It's okay. Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to be heard to speak in the public hearing for the budget? And a reminder, if you're on your phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand. Okay, doesn't look like we have anyone else. So
Madam Chair, I move that, this is Susan Taylor. I move that we close the public hearing.
there is a motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Second made by Councillor Segley.
Second. Leonard.
Is there any discussion on the council? Well, we have to, I will make the motion to approve the ordinance appropriating revenue and ordinance amending Title III personnel on first reading so that we can open up discussion among the council.
Madam Chair, I second it. Susan Taylor.
Second by Councillor Taylor. Councillor Leonard?
Question. The budget that we're going to talk about now that has been seconded, that has personnel, I just want to ask the question before we vote. Is this for $10.28 residential and $15.42 commercial, or is this with an added 2%?
It's the 10, I'm sorry. Can someone else speak?
Go ahead.
It's the original budget. The 1028.
Okay, so your recommendation or for the 2% is not what we're voting on today?
The budget that is in front of us is the no increase. It has not been amended. It is the budget that was proposed at the May 13th meeting.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Napolitano.
Yes, I believe Councillor Mclaughlin made a very valid point. To vote on a school budget that we haven't seen, that they haven't approved, it's kind of backward. I wouldn't mind continuing this to the next meeting.
Councillor Taylor.
Madam Chair, I
Is
would
that a
agree.
motion?
I would agree with Councillors Mclaughlin and Napolitano. It does seem premature. There's still a lot of unknowns.
Councillor McCalla.
I also agree. I sheepishly admit that I don't feel prepared in regards to the 2% increase. I feel like I need a little more information on my part. So I'm gonna ask that we continue this as well.
Is that in the form of a motion? Someone has to make the motion.
Madam Chair, I move that we continue this to the
I make a motion.
meeting to be scheduled on June 10th.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Councillor Taylor with a second by Councillor Napolitano. I would also ask that if we do move this to the next meeting, that the city manager add to the docket a memo that gives the information on what a tax increase would look like so that the public also has the ability to look it over.
Sure.
Thank you.
Where do I raise that hand? Here we go.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. This is Councillor McLaughlin. Mr. City Manager, when we talked earlier today, it sounded like you might have been interested in trying to schedule an earlier meeting so that we weren't.
Oh, I'm sorry, Justin.
Front loading. So, I mean, I'd leave that up to you, but if we don't.
Yeah,
wait till
no.
then,
You're absolutely right. I lost the June 10th. We need this meeting next Wednesday. Thank you for reminding me. We can't wait that long. We need to, we're approaching, well, any day next week.
Yeah, we'll have Pat send out something to schedule it next week.
But I would amend Angela's motion to continue to next Wednesday.
Is there a second? Or, I mean, do you have to make a second to amend the motion? I think you do.
Yes, I'll second that. It's Susan
Okay.
Taylor. It was my motion originally, but I will second the amendment to this motion.
Okay. So the motion is to continue the item to, what is that, June 2nd?
No, the Wednesday is
third.
June 3rd,
June 3rd.
but
Okay.
June 3rd or as close to June 3rd as possible.
Okay. Councillor Leonard.
I have something that I can't attend that day. So,
Well, we'll have Pat send out an email for scheduling to make sure that we can all attend. Okay, motion to there's a motion to continue this item to no later than June 3rd. I will do a roll call vote. Councillor Segley?
Aye.
Councillor Leonard?
Aye.
Councillor Mclaughlin?
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano?
Aye.
Councillor Taylor?
Aye.
Mayor Bova? Aye. The motion passes. Next, we have the resolution regarding the school bond, and this is a resolution memorializing the General Assembly to enact legislation authorizing the City of Newport to issue not to exceed $106,500,000 general obligation bonds, notes, and other evidences of indebtedness to finance all costs relating to the construction, renovation, improvement, alteration, repair, landscaping, furnishing, and equipping of, in addition to the Claiborne Pell Elementary School, including but not limited to classrooms and associated support space, site improvements and parking, and a new school facility for the William S. Rogers High School, provided that the authorization shall be reduced by the amount of certain grants received from state bond proceeds from the Rhode Island Department of Education or from the Rhode Island School Building Authority. I move approval.
Madam Chair, before we move to that agenda item, I just wanted to be clear that the prior vote was encompassing docket items 1A and 1B. The 1B was the ordinance amending Title III for personnel.
Yes, it was.
Good, thank you. So you moved, I will second your motion.
Thank you. Motion and a second by Councilor Taylor. And I know that there's a lot of folks that would like to be heard on this. And my proposal for how we go about the conversation on this is to first allow for public comment and then allow for discussion by the council. But I would ask, given the amount of discussion we've had, to try to limit each councillor to one comment. So that, because I know everyone wants to say their position, but I would hope and if there is not a good reason for that, I'm more than open to hearing it, but I think that it would allow for at least the public to be heard and then everyone on the council to at the very least state their position. Councillor Leonard?
Instead of their actual things they want to say.
Councillor Leonard, can you just say it from the beginning?
Yeah, I mean, I have like 4 minutes or so that I would want to say, not just one comment. This is a $100 million plus thing.
One time, everyone speaks once before anyone. I don't want back and forth until everyone has the opportunity to say their piece.
All right. Okay.
I can't hear you, Councilor Leonard. I'm sorry. Madam Clerk, can you
I don't
please?
know. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it just breaks up sometimes, I think.
Yes, Aaron Sherman, and just a reminder,
Okay.
we'll get 3 minutes.
Mr. Sherman, can you unmute yourself and then identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Hi, my name's Aaron Sherman, 130 Connection Street, Newport. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, everybody. First of all, thank you for having the public comment. Thank you for pushing through all this stuff. It's been hard on everybody, and I appreciate all the hard work you guys are doing. It's definitely not easy doing it this way. I sent an email to everyone on the council this week. I'm a teacher in Newport at Pell and a parent. And specifically, I want to talk about the importance of one bond for one Newport. We cannot get ourselves in the position of putting our elementary students ahead of our high school students. Rogers High School is a wreck. As a parent of a 5th grader and a student that just graduated, I can't imagine allowing my 5th grader to go to Rogers. And I think that speaks volumes as an educator in this district who looks at these teachers and thinks, this is the world-class education that I want my kid to have. I look at my son who graduated and what he got from Rogers, and I want my son to get that, but he can't get that 5th grade now, so in 4 years, he's not gonna get that in that building. So that's a real concern to me as a teacher and a parent. The other concern, I guess, kind of takes Councillor Taylor and Councillor Segley and Councillor Mclaughlin off the hook a little bit, is that I do get a lot of comments about, well, my constituents say, well, for those of you that are at large, and for Councillor Leonard, I am your constituent. I'm one of the people that helped vote you in. And I have to say, this will be a huge contributing factor when election time comes next. To just this vote will play largely into my decision as to who I choose to vote for next time, because I do think that this is the time. Seth Magaziner has told us the money is there for reimbursement. We need to strike while the iron is hot, and we need to put all of Newport students first, not just the elementary school students and then the high school students, and pit them against each other and for survival of the fittest. There's too much of that right now. We need to be one Newport, just like our motto is, one Newport. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to be heard? And a reminder, you can either press the raise hand button on Zoom, or you can press *9.
Chris?
Can you please state your name and address for the record?
Chris Simonelli, address of Middletown, Rhode Island, and the business address is 11 Dr. Marcus Wheatland Boulevard. I'd like to thank all of you for your service, and I'd like to say thank you for the opportunity to put this together. I understand the pressures that everybody are under today, but I think we still need to keep sight of the mission of the bond and of the school system. Personally, as a Newport taxpayer and a parent of a grandchild in the system in Middletown, I respectfully ask that you delay this decision tonight or reschedule it. The approval for a fall approval as provided by the Rhode Island Department of Education in the 2019-2020 necessity of school construction deadlines. The time schedule that will allow for taxpayer vote to occur in a special election in 2021 to include Middletown. And then at that time, a serious consideration could be examined on how to create a unified high school for Newport and Middletown. It's apparent that residents in Middletown have demonstrated they want this discussion with Newport. This discussion was requested by the Honorable Colleen Germain as well. A unified school system would provide an excellent array of classes and career opportunities not possible with a single new high school in one school, in addition to the, so what is really important, and it came up before the town council as a negative, and the demographic mix that would be provided would provide a serious improvement in education for all students. And to really point to that is that when the Unified Forum was held at CCRI, there was a student from Portsmouth who was asked about unification and regionalization, what her thoughts were on it. And she felt that it was needed, and specifically because the student said from Portsmouth, she felt that her school was too white today. And she said that it needed more diversification to enhance education. So I just ask you to please move this decision to a fall schedule and develop a unified school system as was planned originally. And this is a personal opinion. Thank you.
Next, we have Jennifer Gee.
Can you please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record?
Jennifer G., 36 Vernon Avenue, Newport. With all due respect to the speaker before me, it's time for us to focus on the children of Newport. We can't wait any longer for Middletown or Portsmouth to come on board. We've got to take advantage of the opportunity that's in front of us right now and do what's best for our kids. And then if Middletown and Portsmouth students would like to join us at the brand new Rogers High School and tuition in from their communities, they're more than welcome to do that because they're going to want to take advantage of the programs that we're going to be able to provide for our children. So I respectfully ask the City Council tonight to vote one bond, one Newport, and put our children first. Thank you.
Next, we have Amy Machado.
Can you please unmute yourself and state your name and address for the record?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, I love that that's going to be on the record like 500 times tonight. My name is Amy Machado. I live at 12 Burdick Avenue. I am a parent. I have a daughter who is a 5th grader at
I think we had a little bit of technical difficulty. Can we bring her back?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what you heard, but I'll start over. My name is Amy Machado. I live at 12 Burdick Avenue. I have a 5th grader at Thompson. And the state of Rogers High School, as it currently is as a physical building, is a scandal. And the fact that we're even having to argue over this, I'm incredulous over the fact. I really hope that everyone tonight looks deep in their heart and thinks, is this the building that we want to send our children to? And with the reimbursement that we will get from the state of Rhode Island, we are getting a state-of-the-art high school and an addition to Pell for around $50 million. That is a fantastic investment in the future of our children. So please care about the children, the kids of Newport. This is who this is about. Look at the faces of the kids that are at Pell and at Thompson now. This is for them, for the kids. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to be heard?
Looks like Nat. Although.
Can you please unmute yourself and identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Hi, I was on earlier. Thank you. My name is Natalie Harris. I'm from 85 Hillside. And I am also for having a new high school and putting the pre-K kids back at Pell Elementary. I feel like our kids deserve it, and they've already, the ones that were going to Rogers and the ones that are still going to Rogers, I feel like they should have a school that has heat. They should have a school that doesn't have rodents, that there is not leaking on them. I think Newport is a very prestigious, should I say, city, and we should be embarrassed by what our high school looks like. So that's pretty much what I have to say. And also, I do agree with the previous person that was talking, saying that this should not be a discussion. It should not be a discussion. It should already be happening. Thank you.
Next, we have Anna Kimes.
Can you please unmute yourself and identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Hi, can you hear me? This is Anna Kimes.
Yes.
Okay. 28 Atlantic Street. So my belief about all of this is that this is such a serious issue. And a couple years ago, I think it was 2018, we voted on a state bond to improve state and public education buildings. So I just don't feel like this should be decided tonight by 7 city council people. I mean, it's probably, I don't mean any disrespect, but this is a serious vote. And so we're just asking that you simply put it to a bond so that we, all the voters, have a chance to have a voice on this. And I think just to make assumptions that, oh, nope, it's too much money. I mean, we could go back and forth with that, which is why I really believe that this just needs to be put on the bond. You need to let your constituents vote on this. And there's enough evidence to show, plenty of evidence to show that this needs to move forward one way or another. And just let people make a decision in November. Thank you.
Can you please identify yourself with your name and address, Stuart and Leslie?
Yes, hi, my name is Stuart Stroyley. I live at 11 Ellery Road. I'm the product of a very good regional high school in Massachusetts. I really relish the time I spent there. I wish that was in the cards for Newport and Middletown and possibly Portsmouth. It would be a tremendous opportunity. However, I've attended the Middletown City Council meetings. I've followed that discussion. I just do not see any way in the near future that Middletown will come around or Portsmouth will come around to having those discussions. And I don't believe that given the state of Rogers High School, we can wait any longer for a possible change in the Middletown administration. The current city council there is very much against this. I don't think they have their constituents' best interest in mind, but they are the current city council. And I'm not sure you're going to completely change over that council in the next election and get ourselves in a position where we can have a positive discussion on this. So I think it is time for Newport to move ahead. I think a single bond is the way to do it. And as I echo the comments before me, that I cannot believe we are having this discussion this late, given the decrepit condition of Rogers High School. I have a fourth grader and a sixth grader, and it would break my heart to see them go to that high school or forced with the choice of going there or finding another option, because I really believe in the value of public education, especially as they have received to date at Thompson and Bell. Thank you for your time and for listening.
Next, we have Paul Marshall.
Can you please unmute yourself and identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Thank you for the time. I think this is a much needed conversation on something that shouldn't be taken.
Identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Oh, did it not go through? I'm sorry. This is Paul Marshall, 93 Roseneath Avenue. First, I want to say thank you to everybody for allowing the time. And secondly, I think this is an urgent issue, but something that shouldn't be taken urgently. I think that the Pell School has shown some great numbers and success over the years and obviously should continue, and we should put money behind that to increase the infrastructure. As many of people have talked before me, I think the infrastructure at Rogers is abysmal and definitely needs to be, I mean, teachers and students should not be allowed in that building at this point. And our students should not be allowed to be taught there. I wholeheartedly agree that some unification with our neighboring cities should be drastically looked at. But if nobody is able to come to the table, then Newport should move forward with one bond in order to improve our school structures. Thank you for the time.
Next, Melissa Danks.
Can you please unmute yourself and identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Yes, this is Melissa Danks at 22 Shield Street. I also was a product, as I said last time, of actually the same regional school that Stuart just talked about in Massachusetts. And as I said last time, the ship has sailed on Middletown. We can't wait for them to make a decision about what they want. Actually, I take that back. They have made their decision about what they want to do, and they don't want us. It's time to move forward. And also, I 100% fully in support of a one bond for one Newport. Absolutely. I think if you separate it, as Mr. Sherman said, you are, pitting the two schools against each other. And we are, as you said, one Newport. It's ridiculous that we even have to talk about this, as other people have said. So that's my support. I 100% support one bond, one Newport. Thank you.
Is there anyone else from the public that would like to be heard? I see that same person that spoke up earlier. If this is another person using the same Stuart and Leslie, because clearly there are two names there, you may go ahead. Otherwise, I would move to the next person.
Hi, it's Leslie Stroily. Yeah, we're the same household. Can I speak or are we spoken
Yes.
for?
No,
Okay.
it's fine.
Okay, I just wanted to say, listening to this and having participated in many of these conversations as we've all been exploring this, I don't think anybody with a straight face right now can say there is any opportunity in the near future for regionalization. And I know that I am repeating what lots of other people have already said, but this isn't even a debate. Regionalization is not an option anytime in the immediate future. So let's just take that off the table and talk about what's really at hand here. So what I want to know from anybody on the council is holding out on this bond, and holding out on the Rogers bond, I have to say in particular, because by splitting the bond, you are you're pitting the constituents against one another, and setting us all up for a failure when it comes to Rogers. So I would really love somebody to address what is Plan B. Okay, so let's all just stop the fantasy of regionalization and talk about really what are you picturing for our kids if we do not get a new high school. I'm picturing kids going to a high school until it's condemned, and then what? Tuition out? What will that do to our community? Do you care about a middle class? We have a hard time retaining families after elementary school. This has all been documented and researched by RIDE and our other partners. People leave because of our high school. People are not going to come. So what is our community going to look like? This is for our children. This is for our community. And if anybody has some grand plan for Plan B, I behoove you to please make it clear, because those holding out have not presented an acceptable Plan B. Thank you.
Next, we have Lola Herrera Jimenez.
Please unmute yourself and identify yourself with your name and address for the record.
Are you here? You hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I just want to thank you, councillors, for giving us this opportunity in these times that we cannot see each other. But I just want to say that, yeah, and unfortunately, the regionalization thing is kind of a little bit out of the table, because they say the Middletown councillors, they say what they thought about this, and they are not considering this, even if the citizens of Middletown, they are considering this. But we have to take care of our children here. And I just want to also say that it's not only to have a new building, it's to have a new education that can come with that new building, an innovative education of the future that is coming, that we need to change things. So is the building and is the education that we can give to our children. So, and I agree and I echo all the comments of our citizens in Newport that this is our moment. So we have to be for this moment. Thank you all.
So there are two more people with their hands up, and Madam Clerk, after them, I'm going to close public comment and move to the council.
Okay. Alexander G.
Can you please unmute yourself and identify yourself with your name and address?
Hello, I am Peter G., Alexander G's son.
I am a fifth grader at Thompson Middle School. And again, going back to what other people have said, I don't exactly understand why this conversation is still happening. I think that the least that my generation and the generations before us of all these kids, I mean, the very least that we deserve is a good education and a safe learning environment. Because, I mean, really, we are the future of Newport, and we don't want the future of Newport being a group of people who are uneducated and don't know what they're doing, uninspired. Yeah, so thank you for your time.
Next, we have a caller and the last four digits are 1665 of the phone number.
Could you identify yourself with your name and address?
Becky Boland, 4 Channing Street, Newport, Rhode Island. And I just want to say on behalf of the building committee and Louisa Boatwright and myself, who have, really devoted our last 2 years along with everyone else trying to get this, it all comes down to tonight. And I just want to caution everyone that it's very likely that someone's going to, tonight make a motion to try to split the vote. And I'm respectfully asking that you don't let it happen. Let's let this motion go through the way it was written to see if it can pass on its own merits. And that's short and concise and to the point. And I know that I speak for the building committee and many people in Newport.
Thank you. I see that we had one more person that raised their hand while I was announcing that we were having no more, so I'll let them speak and then we can go to the council, but no more. Can you please identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
This is Sybil Greco. I live at 19 Connection Street. I'm considered a newbie to Newport. My family and I moved here about 7 years ago, but I've been teaching in Newport for many years now. I'm both a teacher at Pell and I have daughters that go to Thompson. One reason that my family moved here is because of the community. As a teacher here, I just fell in love with this community. The people, the students, just this amazing feeling of everybody rallying for each other. And I've had many of my second graders graduate from Rogers in the condition that it's in, but I know that we can do better. I'm so proud to say that I have so many students that graduated from Rogers, but and that they are very successful people. But I urge you to vote for one bond, and one bond, one Newport. I really question where the Newporters are that want to split the bond. Are they really members of this community with the families that I have taught and that are my neighbors and friends? Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone from the public that would like to be heard? I mean, sorry, any discussion on the council? Councillor Leonard. And don't forget to unmute yourself.
Does somebody want to make a motion or you want me to make my comments?
We have the motion. I made the motion and Councillor Taylor seconded it before we opened for public comment.
Okay. Okay. I've put a great deal of thought into the school bond issues, and I love and care about our community and the people who live here. As a former educator for 25 years, I've looked at the school bond issue with big eyes. I want to do what's right for the students and the city taxpayers. I have looked at both Pell School and Rogers High School bonds separately, both from a moral and fiduciary eyes. Each bond, Pell and Rogers, I think should stand on its own merit. Not to do so is selfish in terms of the possibility of the Pell bond passing and Rogers High School bond not passing. When it comes to the Pell School, the closing of Clooney School and the need for pre-K education has brought us student population increases. When the school was built, the size met our needs for a short time anyway. Today, with more students enrolled, a larger facility is really needed. For the good of the students, I support a bond issue at Pell. It is a need, and the new construction is affordable. When it comes to Rogers High School, I have a different viewpoint. The world is a different place than when most of us went to high school. Rogers High School will graduate 136 seniors this year. With distance learning, the total enrollment responsibility to the students is to help to provide them with a quality education, an education that will give them success in life. A school of so few students does not offer the opportunity for a large number of class offerings. With contract obligations, other city and school expenditures, and with limited revenues, classes need a certain number of students to be held, to be enrolled in. Small high schools cannot really compete with larger high schools where students can enroll in many classes. As a high school educator for 25 years, it's important that each student reach his or her highest potential for a sound future, to be able to provide for themselves. For 12 years, I was a volunteer at Rogers High School. I raised funds, interviewed students, placed them and monitored them in a summer mentoring horticulture program. They were getting $12 to $13 an hour all summer long, and learning with mentors, one-on-one. Last year, no student applied. I asked myself, and I've asked administration for years, why Rogers High School has not implemented a school to work program. With Northrop Grumman, Raytheon close by, why haven't the students been given the opportunity to attend school until noon, taking academic classes, and then have the opportunity to attend a work environment, one of our many companies? Working on a job gives experience that may lead to full-time employment if the student is not planning on attending college. Has this happened? No, it's just starting now, years later. So my moral responsibility to the students is to have them in a bigger school where they have more choices for classes, more work choices, and they're better prepared for life. With Rogers High School, I also spoke to the RIDE officials, Angela Tixier and Christine Metcalf. I have their responses to my questions and emails. I looked at the bond issue with fiduciary eyes as well as moral eyes. The reimbursement rate for building a new Rogers High School is not a guaranteed 52% as we're told, at least today. It's 35% reimbursement at the completion of construction, and then the possibility of bonus reimbursement when completed 3 or 4 years down the road. And that's shown in the letter, May 20th, from the superintendent. Newport is 35% with an additional bonus incentive possibility of 17.5%. Well, the new fiscal numbers for Rhode Island, for the state, the budget numbers, show a deficit that has climbed to $900 million. Are we guaranteed the extra 17.2%? I haven't seen that in writing. Even if verbally told Newport would get it, who will be in the state legislature at that time? And what will the Rhode Island budget be at that time? It may be probable that we get a lot. It may be probable that we get nothing more than the 35%. Can Newport taxpayers afford that with plus the financing? I question that. I looked at numbers. If the construction costs of Rogers are 97 million, and if I deduct the 35% reimbursement, the number comes to 63,050,000. Then I add on the financing that's really unknown at this time when the construction starts and finishes. It all depends on the bond rate at the time. It is less expensive to work with other communities, maybe tuition in students, than it is to build one to house fewer than 700 students who will have fewer courses. Can I support the Pell Bond? I can do that. I think it's wanted. Morally, the students deserve more, I think, at Rogers High School. They need more classes and more opportunities. Fiscally, taxpayers doubtfully will talk or say they can't afford it. Higher taxes may drive out more stressed out middle class people. I do not want to see a dark community of only seasonal residents. I want families, full-time people who live in this city. The COVID-19 pandemic has shown us all that there are a lot of insights that we need to look at. Newport residents are strong, but Newport today is vulnerable. The tourism shutdown has many people out of work. They're fearful of losing their homes. They're fearful of not being able to pay rent. They're fearful of not supporting their families. Rogers High School students, in my personal opinion, will be better off academically if we work with other school districts to give them a better future. Newport City Council has never met with the other island councils. We passed a resolution to do so, and it was never scheduled by the mayor. This needs to happen. Every high school student on Aquidneck Island deserves more course offerings, more sports opportunities that often keep students in school. And every taxpayer deserves to know that his or her money is being spent well and for the greater good. This week, an anonymous mailer. The sender was the committee building Newport's future. The address belonged to a member of the school committee, but no name. I looked up the organization to see if it's registered as a political. I found no such PAC registered. The mailer has no section that says paid for by, as required by law. So whose money paid for it? It makes me wonder. I can definitely support myself a Pell Bond, but I really want more for the Rogers students. Thank you.
Councillor Segley.
Yes, thank you. This is Councillor Segley. I am going to support putting the bond on the ballot and also as one bond. I feel that the Rogers High School it's obvious that this school needs to be replaced, and this is our time with a 52.5% reimbursement. I don't think we're going to see this kind of reimbursement again. I understand that we would not receive the reimbursement until after, well, the bonus until after the school is built because we have to fulfill certain obligations. But I have a good feeling that that is exactly what will happen, that we will get the 52.5%. We can't let this opportunity go by, and we have to let the voters decide. They have to have all the information. They have to know how it's going to impact their lives. They're going to have to know how it will benefit their children. And I see this one bond as being an important factor in creating better environments for our teachers and for our students. Thank you.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Thank you. I'm not sure if I can talk as long as Kate did, but I could try. I've learned a couple of things recently. Don't fail to speak at a council meeting because people begin to wonder what's going on in your mind. So I want to thank the 64 members of the public who communicated to me via email with respect to this matter, and to the 5 members of the school committee who also did the same. I'm going to start out with a story. In 1965, 2 weeks before Christmas, I received 2 letters. One was from my draft board telling me that as long as I continued to teach school, which I was doing at the time, they would continue to give me a deferment. So if I taught school for the rest of my life, I could have avoided the military, which in 1965, for those of you who weren't around then, a lot of people were working hard to do that because they had no interest in serving in the military. But the other letter I got was from the Navy telling me that come down and get sworn in 2 weeks and you can become a naval officer. I made the right decision, and of course it ended up with a 38-year career working for the Navy as an officer and as a civil servant, both in this country and abroad. But I start off by pointing that out because I'm sitting here looking at the American flag, and when people say, why a split bond? Well, because that's the right of the people to be able to make decisions. And that is my sense, is that if it were my hands, I would be advocating for a split bond. Because the reality is the majority of the people who are going to vote on this matter do not have students in the schools. They may have at one time or another, but they don't today. And to them, this may be an issue that they would like to vote. Maybe they'd like to vote for both bonds. Maybe they only pick one or the other. It's not a matter of, pitting one group of students against another. It's just giving, as I would say, I served in the military to defend democracy. And I think democracy is giving people the opportunity to make choices. In November, you're going to get to pick from 1 or 4 or 5 people who want to be president of the United States. You'll get to pick, hopefully, among 8 people who want to be councillors at large and 14 people who want to be school committees. I could trust you to decide whether you wanted to vote for 1 or 2 bonds. I don't think you're going to, be unable to process that. But I've explained why I would, from a democracy standpoint, be in favor of a split bond. But I'm a smart person, and I realize there is not enough support in this council to go down that road. So I'm not going to go down that road any further. I'm sure you missed my letter in support of regionalization in Newport this week because it appeared in 2005. So my regionalization credentials go back a long way. And as Councilor Napolitano knows, and Chris Simonelli, who spoke to us a little while ago, and Colleen Burns-Germain knows because she was there. I was part of that group that looked into regionalization and tried to provide a foundation for, serious consideration. And I would still be in favor of regionalization. But again, that's not on the table tonight. It's too bad, but that's just the way it is. So I want to talk about affordability, because as people who know me and have listened to me talk about a new school proposal, I've been arguing for many, many, many months, if not years. We can afford it. We have, for all practical purposes, the lowest tax rate in the state of Rhode Island. There are a couple that have lower numbers, but they don't have fire departments, or they charge you extra to collect your trash. We've got a really good deal in Newport, and we can afford to have a new school. So that's not an issue for me. I want to thank Lola for pointing out that, we need a new educational paradigm. People talk about Rogers is terrible. I'm not a member of the club that says build a new school and education will get better. So for the people who are enthusiastic about this project, I think you need to remember, and I've been talking about this for a long time, tonight will be the decision to give the voters the opportunity to make a decision. There's an awful lot of hard work that you're going to have to do in the coming months. As I said at a school committee's city council meeting maybe 4 or 5 or 6 months ago, when I looked at the audience and said, there are 60 people here. If you all vote for the bond when it comes on the ballot, you'll still need another 6,000 votes probably to get it passed. So don't lose sight of the fact that tonight we'll approve to put it on the ballot, but the hard work is going to start tomorrow. And you're going to have to make some good arguments to people in the community, because I have talked to many, many people in the community, and this initiative does not currently have the support, I think, of a majority of the people in the city of Newport. So as we move forward, you're going to have to consider, what are their objections? What is it they want to hear from you with respect to what we're going to do when we build a new school? It's not going to be the building. They're going to want to hear about education and what we can do in that school. And I frankly think that the current superintendent has, brought forward a lot of initiatives that provide opportunities for our students. But we got to do something different, because some 30 to 40% of them don't seem interested in going to the high school on a regular basis. And if we're going to spend almost $100 million to build a new school in which these students can be educated, we need to find what it takes to make them want to go to school. Which will bring me to just my last point at this point in time. And that is, according to my mathematics, the entering class at Rogers this fall will graduate from the existing building. They will be there for 4 years. If there are rooms that aren't warm enough, if there's leaks on the roof, if there are rodent problems, whatever they are, fix them, because you have an entire generation of students who are going to have to go to that school for the next 4 years. They're not going to go to a new school because we vote to put this on the ballot tonight. So there should be no mystery. I support the initiative. I agree that we need a new school. I would have preferred some other options, but they're not on the table. So this is what's on the table. So let's move forward. Thank you.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Okay. So I just wanted to say that the state of Newport school buildings are a result of the investments we make and the reflections of our priority in our budget. If we maintain the status quo, we will continue to have a failed system where nothing will change. Superintendent Germain said it best. We cannot have an international destination and handling infrastructures that house our children. In September 2017, the Rhode Island Department of Education worked together with the School Building Authority to assess our school's infrastructure, studying the health and safety deficiencies, operating building programs, and program changes. Of the 60 high schools assessed, Rogers High School was named the worst facility in the state. And I remember back in 2018, over 100 students walked out of the school building protesting mice and mold in our schools. Those students walked out of their classrooms, some wearing masks, in protest of the poor conditions of their schools. The students were joined with parents and various community members of the schools in support of needing a new high school. We all watched and read as then student Sierra Wright talked about about the conditions of the facility. We also learned that Rogers' architectural design looked futuristic when it was built 63 years ago, but now looks worn and dated. The 3.5 miles of heating pipes and 5 miles of sewer and water lines fail regularly. It is time to put our children first. We cannot continue to penalize our children with indecisiveness. These conversations have literally lasted decades. It is time to stop talking and start with action. We have an opportunity to capitalize on 52.5% reimbursement from the state, the highest reimbursement rate offered in our state with the lowest interest rates in the country. The projects for Pell and Rogers are more than just construction and a building. It is about helping our children to realize the full educational potential. No child should be left behind, and splitting our bonds will do that. Tonight, I am taking a chance that citizens of Newport will ultimately support the passing of this bond. And I ask my colleagues to do what is right and what is best for our children, which is to support one bond for Newport. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor?
I too have been thinking about this issue a very great deal, but I don't have much to say beyond the fact that it's crystal clear that we need a new high school. I think it's clear that everyone in the community cares about our kids. I think that we need to be creating the opportunity for the residents of Newport to vote on the school bond. I intend to support it. And yes, there have been other tempting options that have been discussed over the recent time, but this is our option now. We care about our kids. It's really a no-brainer. I support the one bond.
Councillor Napolitano? Councillor Napolitano, you're on mute. No, you are still, okay, you're good.
Okay. I don't have a prepared speech, but I can say over the past week, 2 weeks, I've lost a lot of sleep. I do thank you for all the emails and phone calls. And I do worry about the affordability of the project. However, that's up to the voters. I think this issue has to be open and transparent. I think the voters need to know what the cost will be. It certainly isn't the highest reimbursement in the state, but it's the highest we've ever gotten. And it does make some sense. I have spoken to RIDE. I spoke to the general treasurer. As far as the interest rate, that's included in the reimbursement, a portion of it, the 52%. So now I believe that I don't want to pit one school against another. I want what's best for all the kids, and it's really going to be up to the voters. Obviously, what we've gone through in the last couple months with the pandemic, we have a lot of other phone calls. I have explained that to people. I've had people telling me that they don't have a job. They've been laid off. They've been, it doesn't exist anymore. And I think that is a real issue for the city of Newport. I know I've heard in the past some complaints about, oh, we've got too many restaurants. We've got too many of this, too many of that. But I can tell you that Newport this year really will be tightening their belts, because there will be very little meal and tax revenue. There will be very little hotel and Airbnb revenue. There will be no cruise ship revenue, and all of these things, and even the parking. I think the parking is going to be affected in Newport. We won't get the kind of revenue that we got before. So all of these things we have to look at, but in the end, I leave it up to the voters. I will support the one bond. And, you know, it's going to be a heavy lift, and people are going to have to work very, very hard. And I just hope that we can come out with a reasonable end to this, or a solution to this problem, because our kids do deserve a good environment in which to study. We've proven it with Pell. I remember all the naysayers then, and all of a sudden the school was filled up. In fact, now bursting at the seams. Pell definitely needs the additional building, and Rogers needs to be rebuilt.
Thank you. Our students are our future. We all know this, and they need a strong education to succeed and grow and be the adults that we know that they can be. And the plans that are in front of us for the new facilities, the addition of Pell, the new Rogers, they represent our community's commitment to meeting our responsibility to our children. The plans are the result of hard work by the school administrators, teachers, parents, students. The whole community took part in building these plans. And the new facilities are going to give generations of Newporters the education and tools and opportunities that they need for the future. And the buildings that we have now are unacceptable. I think all of us know that. We need a change. A state-of-the-art school building, it not only provides the foundation for that education, it also demonstrates to our children that we value them, and it demonstrates to our families that we are here to support them. And we know that they need this. We have children already in our school system that are going above and beyond. We have a student graduating from Rogers this year with his high school diploma and his associate's degree in cybersecurity from CCRI. We have programs at Pell that teach foreign language and environmental issues like composting. And these opportunities are only going to increase and improve with the project in front of us. It was said by our superintendent last week that our children deserve a world-class education for our world-class city, and I could not agree more. With this project, we're going to get the 52.5% reimbursement from the state. We were given a letter by RIDE today that states that we are getting that. This is a historic opportunity for us, for our city, and we're going to benefit from it for generations. I want to commend everyone in the community who puts all the hard work into these plans. And, I heard from, I think the whole council, I heard from so many residents over the past week about this project. They were at least 15-1 in favor versus against, at least. Our community, it needs this opportunity and it wants this opportunity to transform our children's education. I am going to call the question, and I will do it via a roll call vote. Councillor Segley.
Well, could I ask, is the question, just to clarify, the motion is for the one bond? Is this?
Yes. Yes.
It's for okay. Aye.
Councillor Leonard.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Nay to one bond.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Aye.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Kaler.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion passes 6-1.
Application for, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Application for mobile food establishment, cart licenses.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application for a mobile food establishment cart by Viking Hot Dog LLC.
Second.
Motion and a second by motion by Councillor Kaler, second by Councillor Segley. Is there any discussion on the council?
Madam Chair, this is Susan Taylor. I would just mention
Yes.
that this application was received on March 3rd.
Thank you. Councillor Mclaughlin.
Is this a renewal or is this a new?
It's a renewal, but I would defer to Gerard Galvin.
Looks like it's a renewal to me.
And just to clarify, we have before us a number tonight. Could we just identify when we take them up, whether they're renewals or new applications?
Yes. And I will note for everyone that there are 4 applications in front of us, but there are just 3 licenses available. Councillor Napolitano.
Yes, I just want, by the next meeting, I would hope that we could have an ordinance prepared with maybe minor modifications to the locations. I just would like to see it next meeting. I think there are areas that really I was unaware that we had approved, and I just would like to see that.
Councillor Leonard.
I had, the meeting that we made these, the approvals were made for location. I voted no because I thought, which comes to be true, that there are locations that people didn't really investigate enough. There are 3 available licenses and there are 4 applicants. But I want to say that the COVID-19 pandemic affected almost every Newport business. And the Newport businesses pay taxes, or they pay taxes indirectly through their rents. So I would say that, in my opinion, we further compromise them if we raise the number of food establishments that are food carts or food trucks to non-Newporters. I will today now, I would vote for the 2 that are Newport applicants because they live here and they work here and the pandemic has affected us. But so for this one, the Viking hot dog, I would comment that I would support it. And then when we go down to the rest, I will just say, I think it should be for Newport residents since there's so few applications available.
Councillor Napolitano.
Yeah, I concur with Councillor Leonard. Certainly we have a number of establishments that are having great difficulty right now. So that if we approve, I would do the Newport ones. It's difficult enough for them to make the numbers. They have a very slim margin right now because of the reduction in seats. So I do think there's merit to that, and I certainly would support that.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Hi, mine is more really a question. Well, first I want to preface by stating I would love to do that in terms of supporting, putting Newporters as our priority. But I would actually defer to Galvin and just ask, are we within our rights to be able to do that?
Well, I would have some concern about the decision being made purely on the residential. There are, as we discussed last year, certain areas where we have authority to make restrictions, and we can have none if that's your prerogative, and we can limit location. I do have some concern about whether we can say yes to Newporters and no to folks from Middletown or other municipalities if they have the state license.
So as it currently stands, are you saying that we're not able to do that at this time?
No, I don't think you have to. Well, I think you can approve, the renewal, as you said. You take a vote on each one of these things. I'm concerned about whether, about your expression of the Newport residents of the owners is the determining criteria for you. I think you look at these applications and you can make a decision to grant the license or not. That's the best advice I can give at this point.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Thank you. this is Councillor Mclaughlin. I just looking at all four of them and looking at the dates they're either applied or signed. I think that it's easy to, give it the 2 renewals, but the ordinance itself doesn't create a criteria that you have to be a Newport resident to get a license. And therefore, I would be inclined to give the 3rd license to the person that applied next in line. I rather suspect we'd get ourselves in trouble if we were to say you can't have a license because you don't live in Newport. And I want to avoid having to have that discussion. Although if you need the work, Gerard, we can give it to you.
No, I'm already going to be working on this ordinance before next meeting. So if I would invite you all to submit any other concerns in addition to the location. And I have some additional thoughts about ways to improve this ordinance based on some of the things we've seen since last summer. So I'll take that invitation. If you want to submit some additional ideas or thoughts or concerns you have individually to me by email, we can work on that and try to get something back to you.
Councillor Leonard? Councillor Leonard?
Were the renewal dates when they were submitted? Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead now.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can the clerk give us the dates that these were submitted? Because that would be really helpful.
I have them in front of me, Laura, if you don't. Because I can't hear you, Laura. I'll read them. So I have them in front of me, Kate, so I can give the dates. Laura's having some mic issues. The Viking hot dog was received by the clerk on March 3rd. And
okay.
What's the other one? Moose Man's Kettle Corn was received on March 5th. The Coffee Guy was received on March 10th. And Dell's Lemonade was received on March 25th.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
Hi, so I'm going to try. My question is for Laura. Just out of curiosity, I was just wondering, has there been more inquiries or folks coming to try to apply for mobile food trucks or mobile food carts that were not necessarily, like, that we don't know about? Is there a little bit of a demand? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so for those who are listening, the clerk indicated that there was one additional. Is that what you're saying? The city manager is going to try to work on that, helping her with her microphone.
I think she was alluding that there was just maybe like one inquiry.
I don't know. So I will say that, so of the 4 that we have, if we had been meeting at a on a regular basis with the same scope that we have now, that we're allowed to meet with now by the governor's executive order, we would have had the first 3 applications on our docket on March 25th, and the 3rd application would not have been able to be on a docket until April 8th.
Madam Chair, excuse me, Susan Taylor here. That would have been the 4th application, not the 3rd.
Yes, I'm sorry. Thank you. Councillor McCallum, your hand is still up. Did you have something else?
Madam Chair, in the interest of time, unless this
somebody
vote is hanging on the news from Laura about whether there are any additional inquiries, I would like to call the question on this application
Yes, I agree. There is a question in front of, the question in front of us is for the approval of a MFEC license for Viking hot dog. I will do a roll call vote. Councillor Segley.
Aye.
Councillor Leonard.
Aye.
Councillor Mclaughlin. Councillor McLaughlin.
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion passes.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application by Mooseman's Kettle Corn for a mobile food establishment cart license, and that application was submitted on March 10th.
Second.
There is a motion and a second by Councillor Leonard. Is there any discussion on the council? Hearing none, I will do well, the city clerk has her hand up. I don't know. Joe, can you tell me what's going on with the clerk?
She's logging in to another, there she is,
Okay.
to another
Can you
site.
hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank goodness.
Thanks. Okay. So I'll do a roll call vote on the approval of the license for Mooseman's Kettle Corn.
Did that one.
No, we haven't voted yet.
All right.
Councillor Segley.
Aye.
Councillor Leonard.
Aye.
Councillor McCalla.
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion passes.
And Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application by the Coffee Guy LLC for a mobile food establishment cart permit. This one was submitted on March 10th.
Second.
There's a motion and a second by Councillor Leonard. Is there any discussion on this, council? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councillor Segley.
Aye.
Councillor Leonard.
Aye.
Councillor McCalla.
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin.
We go. Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion passes. I will ask, this might be a question for the solicitor. Because we no longer have any licenses available, do we vote to not approve, or do we just not have to vote for the fourth applicant?
Is actually Crispy and City Solicitor is actually a application, so you could take it up to a vote and deny it based on the grounds there is not a license to grant.
Okay.
So Madam Chair, I move that we approve the application by the Long Aid LLC, also known as Dell's Lemonade, for a mobile food establishment cart. This application was received on March 25th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Motion with a second by Councillor Napolitano. Is there any discussion on the council? Councillor McLaughlin.
I would just ask, in essence, we're voting on this to deny it without prejudice, because this person could reapply at a future time.
Yes.
And
Correct.
Yeah, the reason we are,
just thought we should add those words. We're doing it without
Yes.
prejudice.
yes. Good note, Councillor McLaughlin. If there is no further discussion on the council, I'll do another roll call vote. Councillor Segley.
No.
Councillor Leonard.
No.
Councillor McCalla.
No.
Councillor McLaughlin.
No.
Councillor Napolitano.
Nay.
Councillor Taylor.
Nay.
Mayor Bova, nay. The motion fails.
A resolution to postpone the revaluation process?
This is a resolution that was submitted by Councillors Leonard, Segley, and Napolitano. I will allow Councillor Leonard to do the introduction and make the motion.
Thank you. This is the resolution put forward by myself, Councillor Segli and Napolitano. And this concerns the revaluation that Newport is scheduled to do for the next revaluation process for 2021. And with the COVID issues and the economic issues of Newport, other cities and towns like Newport are all mandated to do reevaluation every 3 years to determine the tax levy and the mill rate. Newport is scheduled to complete our reval in 2021. And whereas many residents and commercial property owners have had very difficult economic year with the shutdowns that have resulted in large numbers of closures and unemployment, resolved that the City Council approve this resolution to postpone the revaluation process for the year 2021 until 2022. And be it further resolved that this resolution be sent to the Rhode Island State Legislature for consideration during this legislative session. And I did talk to 3 legislators that said, should this come to them, then they would seriously look at it. I did talk to the city manager, and one of the things he said was that there may be difficulty in getting the reval company to do it 1 year later. And I don't know how true that is. I just think that knowing real estate, the prices of properties that have sold in the recent months might really be a real burden with the assessments, especially for the homes that have sold in the $400,000 to $600,000 range, $600,000 range. Those properties and those of their neighbors, because of the high prices that sold, I think people who had houses that were assessed in the $300,000 to $400,000 range last assessment may really, really be hit hard. And I would really feel that to postpone it for 1 year would give people a chance to get on their feet. So I make a motion to approve.
Second, for purposes of discussion.
There is a motion with a second by Councillor Napolitano. Councillor Napolitano, I know that you have your hand up, but I also saw the city manager had his hand up, so I want to give him the opportunity to speak.
Yes, it's Joe Nicholson, I'm city manager. I also want Chris Bean to unmute himself as well as Laura Citron so we can have a discussion about this. And we're not, in all due respect to Kate, I think this might be a misconception as to the tax year. Postponing this doesn't give any type of relief to anyone. It simply visits upon the city perhaps a stacking up of appeals and an aggregation of funds that we may have to pay out in the event appeals are successful. What's really happening is that you're also postponing, quite frankly, the inevitable for commercial properties. Commercial properties have taken it dramatically on the chin during this pandemic. When you value commercial properties, you capitalize the income, and certainly if your income is limited for whatever reason, your value is going to be lower. So we're urging that we meet this issue head on and don't delay it for another year. And I know I can only anecdotally advise what I've been advised by our tax assessor consultant, as well as the finance director, of the limitation of companies in that 12 communities next year are going out for revaluation, and the pickings are slim will be slim for companies that are need to do this vital work to municipality, but postponing this doesn't really accomplish anything in our opinion. And I'd like you to chime in if the chair would permit the solicitor to chime in as well as the finance director to give their assessment of this, please.
Yes, absolutely. Please.
Okay, I would agree with the manager in terms of the putting this off another year when up to 12 other communities could be doing the revaluations could be problematic, certainly in trying to obtain a reval company, especially the most familiar with, who have done the work for us in the past, who we know about. The state in the reval process does have the communities all staggered for that purpose. So there isn't all the communities having revals at the same time. And the other issue is dealing with the appeals. If we do keep the present values for the next year by putting off the revaluation, then we will have issues with appeals. And that's because of a recent decision by the Rhode Island Supreme Court. We used to be able to use the value established by a revaluation for the ensuing 3 years until the next update or revaluation. Now the Supreme Court says that that value needs to be determined each year. So if we held a higher value, this present value, and ensuing years the values dropped, especially commercial properties, because of the income approach. That's how they're predominantly valued, is using an income approach, and all the incomes will be down. And they're going to be able to appeal that and use a current value. So that alone, I think, even though I know Kate's resolution is well-intentioned, I think it will have some pretty serious consequences in terms of appeals and abatements.
Did the finance director want to speak on this? Okay. Councillor Napolitano?
Yeah. Unfortunately, I think I would agree with both the manager and the city solicitor. I talked to both of them. To take it out of sync and potentially not have a company for next year could really create a lot of problems. You know, it sounded like a good idea initially, but I think we should move forward at this point.
Councillor Leonard?
Picking up with what was said in the last 5 minutes, I have to say that I am comfortable with the chosen company that we voted on this year, and that I'm comfortable with. The company before that, I can prove not so much. I understand the income approach for businesses. It's my understanding from what I hear at the State House that those forms are sent by the tax department, tax assessor, to businesses for the business, the income approach. But supposedly, and this I can't substantiate, those forms are sent out, but by law, supposedly they don't have to return them. On the other side of it, in terms of homes, I understand what both the city manager and the solicitor are saying. I just want to tell people that there's been a huge increase in home values in the last 3 years, so that people should be prepared that that's coming. But at the same time, I think with everything said, we should go forward, but I want a fairness in these. I can tell you the last reval, specific parts of town were pinpointed that were really, really increased in value where other areas were not, which I proved with my MLS stuff. But I will move to table this item at this time.
Thank you, Councillor Leonard. There was a motion to table with a second by Councillor Segley. I'll call the question and do the roll call vote. Councillor Segley.
We are voting to table, is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Councillor Leonard.
Aye.
Councillor McCalla.
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Aye. Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion passes to table.
A resolution regarding road closures.
This is Jamie Bova. I submitted this resolution with Councillors Taylor and Segley, requesting that the city administration and public works study the benefits and impacts of closing various public roadways to cars and/or parking, and deliver a recommended plan to the council for approval at the June 10th council meeting. And I would move for approval.
Second.
Motion and a second by Councillor Segley. And I would say that the reason I submitted this and the reason we submitted this is because I've heard from a lot of restaurants who would like to be able to, and businesses who would like to be able to close some of the side roads or even some of the parking areas near their establishments to be able to to be able to expand their business operating area. And also I've heard from residents who have said they would feel more comfortable being out in public, and if there was areas that were closed off so they could more easily distance themselves from others. And so this would be a way for, this would be us officially asking the administration to work on that and come to us with a plan so that there would be time for staff to reach out to various businesses and restaurants and have the businesses and restaurants reach out to staff, and also allow public participation and comment on proposals of road closures. Councillor Taylor?
Yes, I feel very strongly about this concept. I think that it is one of the most exciting options that's presented by the crisis that we're now in. The virus thrives in density, and we need to create space so that we can hope to defeat the virus. And opening up our streets is one way that we can do that and have something new and fresh that allows our businesses to expand out of their interior spaces into the street, allows pedestrians, cyclists, people using alternative modes of transportation to enjoy the streets in a new way. And I think it will bring people out. It will make residents and tourists comfortable together. I see great possibilities for this, and I think this is the summer that calls for this type of an experiment.
Councillor Leonard? Councillor Leonard?
Oh, can you hear me?
Yes.
I want to thank the city manager first, because he, I know, has been working hands-on with all the businesses, especially the restaurants, on finding ways so that they could increase the number of tables in a safe, healthy way so that the businesses can work towards regenerating themselves. Second, I think it's safety first. And I think part of safety first is that open spaces are more healthy today than being in a closed restaurant environment. So I thank the city manager, and I think that this proposal, this resolution, can go back and look at what's safe and where it can be. So, but at the same time, make sure it doesn't create big traffic jams. So thank you.
Councillor Napolitano?
That was my caution too, even at the last meeting. I think it's a great idea, but I think we've got to be very, very careful with the public, particularly Thames Street. It is narrow and the sidewalks are narrow and there's residents all up and down. So I just want to make sure. I just want to make sure that there is public input to this.
Absolutely. That's why the calls for the June 10th conversation as well. Councillor Mclaughlin.
Okay, what do we do here? Oh, I guess I'm not. Thank you. This is Councillor Mclaughlin. When I first read this, I was thinking that people wanted to close streets for pedestrian purposes, but most of this discussion has dealt with the businesses, and I know the city manager has done a fantastic job working with all of those businesses. But there are issues that we're going to have to deal with when the restaurants are allowed to have 50% of their interior capacity starting next Monday, as to how many of these roads which have been closed need to stay open. And in some ways, I'd love to see a summary of what kind of permissions have been granted to various people. I'm concerned that it's difficult to treat everybody the same way. Some have benefited more than others because of the permissions we have given them. You know, whatever the standards are, and you know, I obviously talked to a business owner who, as he explained, I needed 4 more inches in order to be able to have a table in front of my business. And you know, I'm not sure we can put barriers in the street and close off part of Bellevue so that he can have his 4 more inches and have a table, and yet we've closed off large numbers of parking spaces on Broadway that benefited other businesses. So I'd be curious to know, as we move forward, what the standards are and what we're going to do when we get to phase 2. You know, it's a broad discussion, and I look forward to further discussion. A broad issue, yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. And I thank Councillor Napolitano for reminding us that we do need to be mindful of the residents who rely on some of these very busy streets for access to their homes. I think that part of this plan may need to consider certain hours of the day. Of course, we need to allow for delivery trucks and so on, but I think everything should be on the table, and we should try to figure out what will be a creative plan. And I think it would be great to engage our planning department, and to the extent that the planning board has bandwidth for this, we could engage them as well.
Thank you, Councillor Taylor. And I will say too, just in response to some of Councillor McLaughlin's comments, absolutely, we have to consider this from the perspective of pedestrians. And that was part of the thinking, as you know, as we allow businesses to expand more into sidewalk areas, how can we still make it safe and palatable for pedestrians to be out there as well? Is there any further discussion on the council? Hearing none, I will call the question. Councillor Segley?
Aye.
Councillor Leonard?
Aye.
Councillor McCalla?
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano?
Aye.
Councillor Taylor?
Aye.
Mayor Bova? Aye. The motion passes.
A resolution regarding guiding principles for summer 2020.
I submitted this resolution with the intention of trying to spur a conversation on the council to try to come up with a set of clear policy directives for the city manager as he works on a plan going forward, and you know, ensuring that we you know, he always says we set the policy and he institutes it and makes the plans for that. So that's the goal of this resolution. And I want to also ensure that we are continuing dialogue with businesses, and which I know, I think Joe's phone is going to overheat one of these days by how much time he spends on it. And also, you know, a lot of businesses have reached out about ways that they could potentially help the city as well. So I was hoping that we could have a discussion on that during this meeting. And I also welcome amendments to this by my fellow councilors, because I do want it to be something that's from the council as a whole. Is there discussion on the council?
Sorry, do you have a second?
Sorry?
Do you?
Oh, yeah, I should make the motion. Motion to approve.
Okay, and I second that.
Thank you, Councilor Taylor. Councilor McLaughlin.
Thank you, Councillor McLaughlin. We need standards, we need guidance, but in some ways we passed a declaration which gave the city manager the job of making all of those decisions. And someday soon we need to put him out of his job, put him out of the job of doing that, and start taking control. So in some ways you're laying down a foundation to do that, to say, we agree with what the city manager has done in the past, and now we're in charge and these are our rules. But for the time being, we gave him the job to do that. And all of these things, he has loosened the restrictions and he has gotten public spaces and all of that good stuff. But I just want to raise the idea, at some point in time, we need to get back in the job of being the city council and making these decisions in a very formal way. And to that extent, I spoke with the manager today and said, in my mind, when we go into phase 2, we need to start meeting in a room together where we can look at each other and have conversations. And at that point in time, you know, start exercising our responsibility and authority to provide guidance to the city administration. And I hope that we can do that soon. So my comments.
Thank you. I also want to mention that I did have a lot of businesses that reached out to me just since yesterday, based on the conversation that we had during our COVID-19 status meeting, that they were concerned with the conversation and some of the comments made regarding restrictions on takeout that the city manager brought up. And I do think that that's a conversation that I don't think we necessarily need to have tonight, but I do think it's something that we should have as a council, and especially in the vein of how those restrictions could harm businesses in a way that we don't necessarily desire, obviously. And something else that I just want to call attention to in this resolution is the question of enforcement overall for whatever public health measures that either the city or the state puts in place. And that's something that I know all of us on the council have gotten a lot of calls and comments from members of the public on. If there's no further discussion, I would call the question and do the roll call vote. Councillor Segley.
Aye.
Councillor Leonard.
Aye.
Councillor McCalla.
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion passes.
Resolution regarding the homestead exemption.
I would like to move that we continue this to June 10th.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to continue. There's no discussion. I'll do the roll call vote.
Madam Chair,
Councillor Mclaughlin.
I just want to, and thank you for continuing it. I just want to point out that we passed a resolution last fall that was with respect to school funding, and it asked that we identify steps to develop a plan to integrate a variety of programs that could mitigate the cost of a new school, and we'll discuss this in the future. But the homestead exemption is just one arrow in our quiver, and we need to make sure we pull it out when we need it. But we also need to be aware of what other arrows there may be available to us to deal with whatever it is we're trying to deal with as we move forward. So it isn't just a simple, oh, let's have a homestead exemption. It's a very complicated situation. And the city manager last year, had a plan to do a transfer, conveyance transfer, which didn't garner support. But all of these things are part of a group of tools that we need to make sure we're looking at all at the same time. So when we bring it back whenever we bring it back, we should be, thinking in terms of everything. Thank you.
And I will say, the intention is to have a larger discussion on June 10th, rather than tonight, because we have had a lot of items on our plates so far. Councillor Leonard.
I agree with Councillor Mclaughlin. I would like to see this discussion as part of a bigger discussion. And homestead exemptions are really quite complicated. Different communities do it different ways. Newport chose to have a dual tax rate instead. So I think that the discussion when it comes up should be, like Councillor Mclaughlin said, a variety of things, maybe with the same purpose in mind. So I'm just saying homestead exemptions are not as easy as people think they are in terms of results and procedures.
Did the city manager want to comment?
So
yes, thank you. It's Joe Nicholson, city manager. I actually missed something that you said, Jamie. You used the June 10th?
Is that not our next meeting?
Yeah, I mean, if this is in the context of the FY22 budget.
Yes,
so
not FY21.
Okay.
So this is, yeah. This is not this is to asking to start yes, this is for FY22. And like I said, I want us to have a discussion. I just don't think we need to take the time up tonight, because that's why I'm continuing it, or moving to continue. Councillor Napolitano.
Yeah, when you think about everything that's going on in our community, particularly with the corona, I think this is a lot to lay on administration at this time. Maybe we should talk about it in a larger scope in the fall, or at least when things settle down a bit. I think to, kind of rush it and put it on the next meeting. There are a lot of other things that we can do aside from the homestead. And, I think it would behoove council members to at least understand how the homestead works and would it work for Newport, and other methods. And there are other methods, but I prefer to do it in the fall when things settle down a bit.
So this resolution is asking the administration to come up with examples of how, or options for how it would work for Newport, so that we may have that discussion. And it was asking for that discussion to be in the fall. It is just prompting the preparation of that larger discussion. And I am moving this to June 10th, and we'll have more conversation then. And I'm going to call the question on the motion to continue to June 10th. Councillor Segley.
Aye.
Councillor Leonard.
Aye.
Councillor McCalla.
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin.
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano.
Aye.
Councillor Taylor.
Aye.
Mayor Bova. Aye. The motion to continue passes.
A resolution regarding mask wearing.
This is a resolution that was submitted by Councillor Taylor, and so I am going to give Councillor Taylor the floor to introduce and move.
Thank you. This resolution has gotten a fair amount of attention. I don't think I need to read it in its entirety, but the whereas clauses are talking about the public health value of wearing a mask, which prevents your own droplets from traveling and infecting other people. And it talks about how we are hoping that with the warm weather, we will have more people coming out. And it's talking about how on specific streets in Newport, it is just impossible to maintain social distancing during the busy hours. And so the resolved section reads that on Friday, May 29th, 2020, the City of Newport shall begin enforcing the requirement that pedestrians wear masks at all hours, unless wearing a mask would be harmful to a person's health, on the following streets. And I've listed Broadway between Gould Street and Farewell Street, America's Cup between Long Wharf and Memorial Boulevard West, and Thames Street between Washington Square and Wellington Avenue. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Shall I say a bit more about my decision to introduce it?
Yes, go ahead.
I drafted this resolution because I had just heard from so many residents, really, I think since Easter weekend, who are afraid that downtown Newport is frankly going to belong to tourists who already, by coming here, have not been obeying their state's stay-at-home orders. And the local residents have told me they just want people to wear masks, and then we can all enjoy downtown together. And that's the purpose. What we are saying to people is that we are deciding that on these streets, it's just not possible to maintain the social distancing. It may be that the discussion leads us to a discussion of certain hours of the day rather than all day, 24 hours. I should add that since submitting this resolution, I've been hearing from business owners. One of them described a rush of relief on reading the resolution. She owns a small boutique on Lower Thames, and she said that when she's had customers coming into her shop, she's asking them to wear masks. Some of them don't want to. There have been some difficult interactions, and she is hopeful that she doesn't have to be the police trying to get people to understand and comply with a request to wear a mask. Another 25-year-old who works also on Lower Thames as a manager of one of the stores there said that she has a father at home who has stage 4 cancer. And when she goes to work, she is scared to death of what she might be bringing home. She wants to have people complying with the mask wearing. And these are some very moving stories. And I also have heard from a lot of people who would like to see Bellevue included in this resolution. So I have more to say, but with that, I'm interested to hear what other councilors think.
Councillor Mclaughlin.
I'd like to thank Councillor Taylor for bringing this resolution. I think that although we are showing signs of progress and recovery, now is really not the time to be lax about things. And I think that making sure that we're trying to keep as safe as possible, ensuring that our numbers continue to stay low is imperative, and we should be still doing our due diligence to make sure that we're limiting forms of any type of infection. So thank you, Councillor Taylor.
Councillor Segley?
Yes, I have a couple of concerns about this, and the one concern, my major concern, is that this resolution is going to raise the expectations of residents to thinking that we can actually enforce something like this. And it concerns me. I think I don't want people to say, oh, well, the council, the governor and the council passed a resolution, but people still are not wearing masks. And somehow it's going to come back to, they're going to be very disappointed. And I worry about the enforcement issue on this. And but having said that, philosophically, I agree that mask wearing should be done. I believe that there's proven evidence that it does help with the spread of any virus. And I will vote for this resolution, but I'm afraid that we're promising something that we can't really do.
I actually wanted to tag on to what Councillor Segley was saying, because one of my concerns is the enforcement question, because part of the issue that we've had across the board with so many of the public health mandates has been the question of enforcement. And something I would like to see from the city manager is a plan for enforcement, not just for this resolution, although obviously I think it's needed for this resolution, but really across the board for how we can look at increasing enforcement of all the public health measures that have been put in place. Because I think that needs to go hand in hand with a resolution like this. For this resolution, which needs to be successful, but for it to be successful, we need to have an enforcement plan. Councillor Mclaughlin.
Thank you. Councillor Mclaughlin, the city manager and I had a conversation some weeks ago when I made a suggestion to him, which I'm going to repeat tonight, because we were talking about the Cliff Walk at the time, but now it's going to be downtown. Enforcement is going to be so difficult, and I really don't think we're going to have police officers with guns walking up and down these streets telling people they have to put masks on. Based on what I've read on social media, I can't even say what most people say when they're told to put a mask on at this meeting. They're not very polite. And but I think what we should be thinking about, this is enhanced attention to the rules. And the governor said at one of her news conferences earlier this week, this requirement to wear masks is going to be with us for months, 6 months or longer. So we need to come up with a paradigm to send the message that Newport wants you to wear a mask. And as I said to Joe at the time, we need a card that very succinctly lays out what the rules are and what the expectations are of visitors to Newport. So we don't have to necessarily have people with guns passing them out, but we can have people working for the city who can be passing out cards. We could be giving them to restaurants and to businesses who can leave them and say, these are the Newport rules. I think if we expect everybody to wear their mask, we're just fooling ourselves. But the bottom line is, if we can get 50% of the people, which will be an improvement over last weekend, or if we could get 75%, which would be even more wonderful, we'd be making a dent in providing greater safety, greater health security to everybody. So I would just suggest that one of the enforcement rule mechanisms could be some sort of a card that we pass out to people, like a postcard size, that shows where the rules apply and just reiterates the fact that these are the state rules. We're just asking people to abide by them in our community.
Madam Chair, can I jump in quickly to respond to a couple of points that have come up?
I want to have the city manager respond first, and then I'll go to you, Councillor Taylor.
It's Joe Nicholson, city manager. Thank you. I'm a little bit confused as to some of the language, not necessarily of the resolution. I'll get to the resolution in a moment, but with phrases like the enforcement of the public health measures. We had this conversation a week or two ago, and we've had it other times as well. Maybe I've had it individually with you, but I know we had it as a group. And that is the enforcers of the public health measures. These are not municipal edicts. We don't have the authority to issue and to enforce public health measures. It's been clear from the governor's office. It's been clear from RIDO that, and it's been clear from the Department of Business Regulation that the responsibility of the enforcement of the public health measures lie with the state of Rhode Island, not with the municipality. And in fact, they preempted our ability to do that in many respects. With regard to the resolution itself, and enforcement, by the way, means, it means to a certain extent, at least to individuals like myself and the solicitor and the police department, means a mechanism to enforce. And that is, generally, it's either some type of injunctive relief, or indeed, in instances like this, some type of fine schedule. And in that regard, with regard to the governor's edict on masks, she delegated to the Rhode Island Department of Health the authority to enact regulations to indeed enforce the mask wearing requirement, with a lot of exceptions. You're all familiar with the exceptions. I had a parallel track going with, the city administration had a parallel track going with the council on this, and it diverges a little bit, not a lot, but a little bit. And it diverges in that I've drafted an executive order with the solicitor's assistance, which has those exceptions in there. My understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, because the council, of course, I have to, and it's my obligation to adhere to any council direction. But my understanding of the resolution is, at all times, notwithstanding the exceptions, the public health guidance exceptions that are set forth in RIDO regulations, that we're going to do something a little different with regard to those. Though I do note the resolution does talk about unless wearing a mask would be harmful to a person's health. And in that regard, we also need, if this resolution passes, or if an executive order were to be issued, we need some type of enforcement definition. And in any instance like this, it would be a civil fine schedule, I believe. And if I'm wrong, Chris, just please correct me, because much of this falls on you in that regard. But I just wanted to, that's what I wanted to add to the discussion, if I could, please. Thank you.
Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Yes, in response to the difficulty of raising expectations that won't be met, I understand the concern, but I think that Newporters are reasonable. They understand that because we would pass this resolution and get this concept into an executive order, it doesn't mean that you're not going to encounter someone without a mask downtown. But I think of jaywalking. It's like we have jaywalking on the books. We don't have the capability to issue a citation every time a person jaywalks, but we don't take jaywalking off the books for that reason. So I think that the message that would be sent to Newport residents, if we don't pass this, because we're concerned that their expectations may be unduly raised, I think that's the wrong message to be sending. I also think about the shop owners who are trying very, very hard to make up for a fraction of the losses they've suffered. And it just, Councillor Mclaughlin, when you said that people are being rude, and I know they are, I don't think that means that we put the interaction with the person back onto the shopkeeper without any teeth in an executive order. So if there's an executive order on the books which covers this scenario, then the shopkeeper can at least refer to that. It's not the shopkeeper saying, I don't want you to wear a mask. And I regret that I haven't had a chance to speak to Mr. Bean today, and I will look forward to that. I realize that there may be nuances that I haven't considered, but where I found the authority for such an executive order that would cover what I propose in the resolution is in the RIGL chapter 30-15-2, purposes of the emergency management provisions. And one of the purposes is to provide a setting conducive to the rapid and orderly start of restoration and rehabilitation of persons and property affected by disasters. I think that can be applied to the situation where we're trying to reopen for business. That's subsection 3. The other subsection that I found that I thought was relevant was subsection 9, to prepare for emergency health threats that require the exercise of extraordinary government functions. So I certainly feel that our city manager is justified under the declaration of emergency to issue an executive order to cover this behavior. And I would love to consult with the city manager and the solicitor, not necessarily in this format, but I'm hopeful that we can find a way to implement the concept of this.
Thank you. I believe that Councillor Mclaughlin was next, unless you already spoke.
Yes, Councillor McLaughlin, again, I just want to, weigh in with respect to something that Councillor Taylor said. There are speed signs on the highway that say you should only drive a certain speed, but there isn't a police officer to stop everybody who speeds. But it's a declaration of intent. It's what we want people to do in order to provide a safe environment for people who are driving cars on the highway. There are lots and lots of examples like that. So I have no expectation that we're going to cite everybody who doesn't wear a mask, but providing the expectation that we want you to, as a municipal government, I think is a good thing to do. But we just have to be realistic that we're not necessarily going to make everybody do it, but we're creating a standard, and we want people who come to visit us to understand that's our standard. So good job.
Councillor Leonard.
I'm very health conscious, and I think like most of us, I stay away from places at this time when I think there's some risk to me. I think that this resolution was really well intentioned, but I do still think, like the city manager said, that I don't think we can put teeth to it. And I think that the Rhode Island Department of Health is ultimately the one to tell us what we cannot and can do. And I know that the intention's really good, and I would hope, which I'm finding is not true, that people would really be conscientious and care about others, but they don't. I really just don't see, I know it's a great message, I just don't see how it would ever really happen where anybody can get cited, because I will ask the question out loud, have we cited anybody, even though we've been doing this for 2 months and we've seen time and time and time again people going by? I think we, as well-intentioned, we don't have the manpower. We don't have any kind of enforcement that we could do. We can't arrest them. So are we basically just saying this is how we feel and let it go at that, because that's really what I think it would end up being. I guess I would say that I would like to see a plan or a discussion by city management, administration, how they would actually do it. And I don't think it's possible.
City manager.
Actually, Susan's last comments lended, at least in my mind, and maybe in the solicitor's mind, some clarity in terms of how to approach this. I think it kind of tied together the resolution with what the executive order that we have put in draft form. And so we can build on that. I think that's my point. I think that it's clear to me now. Let me just say, and I can work with the solicitor, and I can work with Susan as the drafter of the resolution on this a little bit more. You're all absolutely correct. There is no perfect enforcement mechanism here. We're not going to get everyone in the world. It's the message. And it's a good message that all of you want sent. And that's the most important thing, I think, to come out of this. And it's no different than discussions I've had with all of you earlier in the week, based upon observations that we all had over the weekend, and indeed observations that I brought up to the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns that were forwarded to the governor's office on this very issue that the resolution describes, and that we've codified in an executive order. The important thing is to have, when you talk enforcement, is you have to codify something as the end result. And that's what we're all struggling here to a certain extent. RIDO has done that. On the bare face of Title 30, it's a criminal offense. Well, we're not going to be jailing people or fining them huge sums of money for this, but it's the civil aspect of it that has that RIDO has come up with, that has the muscle to it, I think, that we can simply borrow, incorporate, if you will. And that's been part of the issue is, where do we draw the line between the state's public health edicts and what we can do locally? But I can tell you that in at least my discussions with the governor's office in the last couple of days is the mask issue is fair game. Some of these other things are not, but the mask issue is fair game in terms of local action.
And
Councillor Taylor.
thank you. Yeah, well, the governor is thinking statewide. And so when she talks about the ability to maintain social distancing, she is not thinking about Lower Thames Street, America's Cup. We know what those streets are like, and we have seen over the course of 6 weeks now, on the weekends, what is happening there. And we first noticed it, I think, on the Cliff Walk, even when the weather wasn't as good. But it's become clear now what's happening. And what we're saying is simply, you may think, you may not have come here lately or come on a busy weekend. You may think that you can social distance. We're telling you no, it's not possible. And so on these streets, we're asking you to wear a mask, and there will be penalties if you're not responding. I also am hopeful, and I have talked with the city manager about this and others, hopeful that we will be able to find masks that we would be able to give out to people as they're being encountered and asked to wear a mask.
I've got a secret stash, so don't worry.
Councillor Napolitano.
Yeah, as good as the resolution is, I think the enforcement issue would be difficult. At any given time, we have probably 10 to 15 cops on the street, and they have a lot of other things that they're doing or looking at. You'd have to be under a rock not to know that they're advocating people to wear masks. I don't want this to become a political issue or people shaming people perhaps that aren't wearing masks. I understand where you're coming from. I agree with you. But by the same token, I'd like to compliment, there's any number of stores. I do a lot of walking and I walk with the mask, and any number of stores that indicate right on their door, mask customers only. And people are abiding in it. You know, this is a difficult situation. I commend you for putting it in, but I'm not sure we have the wherewithal to put the teeth into it.
I want to open it up to the public only because I see that we have someone that has had their hand raised this entire time wanting to speak. And then I'm gonna call the question. Can you please identify yourself with your name and address for the record? And unmute yourself.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Sarah Merowitz. I live at 6 Record Street, Newport, Rhode Island, across from the Great Newport Hospital. I just wanted to thank Councilwoman Taylor for addressing this issue and to take a moment to acknowledge what everyone has sacrificed for us to get to this place where we're even considering entering phase 2. Our children have sacrificed their school year, our businesses have sacrificed revenue, our healthcare workers continue day in and day out to sacrifice their own health and well-being to care for our community. To me, the issue of acknowledging that mask wearing is required within certain parameters sends the message not only to our visitors, but to our residents that they're important, that they're valued, and that their safety is paramount. I understand that we're not going to have a meter maid for masks walking around assigning tickets. I do think, however, there are creative ways to acknowledge that a guest has entered a masked zone. We accomplished this with ease during the Broadway Street Fair, where we have huge sections barricaded and marked as open container zones where people can walk freely with alcohol. We indicate pretty clearly to them when they leave that space. I think we have those great signs that say, you know, buckle up or it's Folk Fest. It wouldn't be out of the realm to develop a messaging system that indicated to our visitors that we value them and we appreciate them, but we put the safety and the health of our community first and foremost. Thank you.
Thank you. There's someone else that wants to speak. Can you please identify or we'll give you permission to speak momentarily. Can you unmute and identify yourself with your name and address for the record?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for all of your time tonight on the school issue and this. My name is Catherine Dugan. I live at 113 Carroll Avenue. I appreciate this resolution as well. I just would like to comment, I know we can't police every situation in town, but I've heard a lot of chatter about the disheartening view that people have when they see large congregated, you know, groups together, maybe around the Ocean Drive or in parks, and a police officer has the drive close enough to kind of say, you know, it's time to move along, or it's, you know, too large of a group, or that sign says no parking, and then the police officers aren't doing that. So I think we need to be aware of kind of this as a bigger issue. I know we can't enforce everything, but when we have the opportunity, I think we should speak up and move people along as well.
Thank you. Councillors Leonard and Mclaughlin, if you have new comments to add, I will open the floor. Otherwise, I want to call the question.
Of course, I have a new comment. This is Councillor Mclaughlin. I want to suggest to Councillor Taylor that you make a motion to continue this and that you work with a solicitor and you bring back, even as soon as our meeting next week to deal with the budget, something that perhaps is clearer. And because I don't want to see 4.5 votes or 3 strong votes and 4 weak votes on something like this. I hope that we can come together and do something that has 7 strong votes. And there's a little bit of concern I'm hearing in some members of the council, and I think those concerns should be addressed. And maybe working with the solicitor, you could do that. That's just my suggestion to you. You can do what you want.
Councillor Leonard.
I agree with that. I'm really torn because I don't think we've cited anybody, and I don't know how we would, but I personally want to be safe, and I think everyone that's walking near people would want to be safe and keep others safe. But the way it stands, I think it's more feel good than do good. And so I just agree with Councillor Mclaughlin that maybe if there's a clear way to do it so that the enforcement could happen, but I just don't see it happening like this as much as I'd like it to.
Councillor Taylor.
Yeah, I take that as a friendly suggestion, except I'm not crystal clear what the suggestions are that should be incorporated. Councillor Mclaughlin, I appreciate your emphasizing the need for a publicity campaign, that we need to, first of all, make it very clear to individuals that this is the ordinance in Newport. This is what we require. This isn't designed to be punitive. The point is that we would make masks available. The point is to get people to wear masks and to increase the confidence of people who want to go downtown but are feeling scared off by crowds of people who aren't wearing masks. So we would notify people. I haven't heard anyone talk about limitations on hours. And I haven't heard anyone talk about Bellevue Avenue. As far as the concern that we don't have enough police officers to enforce it, I really can't take that very seriously. It would be great to have enough, but even, we're going to be citing or at least seriously admonishing some people. And I think that's the purpose of this, is to get the standard advertised and get more people to adhere to the standard. And you do that with some citations which are going to act as a deterrent. So I'm happy enough to table this to our meeting next week if you would agree to reach out to me and let me know what concerns you think will make it work. I'm committed to making it work. I don't simply want to table this.
This is Councillor Mclaughlin, and I'm committed to voting for it. I just think that it would be helpful, Councillor Taylor, if instead of just saying enforcing the requirement, that you had some discussions with the Director of Public Safety and the city solicitor as to how that would actually be done. And I think that would garner more support. But and Joe's already told us it's going to rain this weekend. So
I'm not sure he's right.
Well, he's our weatherman.
The report's changing, man.
Councillor Taylor, is that in the form of a motion?
Yeah, I will move to table this until our meeting, which is going to be held next week.
Second.
There is a motion and a second to table. I will call the question. Councillor Segley?
Aye.
Councillor Leonard?
Aye.
Councillor McCalla?
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano?
Aye.
Councillor Taylor?
Regretfully, aye.
Mayor Bova? Aye. The motion to table passes. And that is the last item.
And Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Councillor Segley?
Aye.
Councillor Leonard?
Aye.
Councillor McCalla?
Aye.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Aye.
Councillor Napolitano,
Aye.
Councillor Taylor,
Aye.
Mayor Bova, aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.